Rolling right along. It's episode 224 of Catfish on Ice, live NHL trade deadline edition. So much is going on. We are going to be reacting live with all of you while all of this madness unfolds. This is Chad Minton with Max Greenberg. How you doing, man? You keeping up with everything? First of all, the ceiling fan looks like you're wearing a hat right now. It looks hilarious.
I didn't even notice. I can see with that. I didn't even think about that hardly.
It's okay. It's hilarious. Okay, so NHL trade deadline, NHL trade deadline reaction. Max, right when we go on live, right as we were counting down, the Preds just made another trade. Tell everybody what just happened.
Yeah, it looks like Wade Allison, who I'm not sure really who that is, I'll admit, has just been traded to the Preds for Denis Gurianov.
We saw that, kind of expecting Denis Gurianov as being – he played last night, interestingly enough, against the Sabres. But, it didn't look like he was going to have a long-term future here in Nashville. He got his tryout. He got his chance. Didn't really work out. I didn't think he was a complete bust or he looked horrible all the time, but just doesn't make sense to keep him around. So I'm not sure about this player in return either. We'll have to do more research on that. But another major trade that happened within the last hour, Max, is one that the fan base seems very split on. In fact, more of the fans are very confused about this trade, but the Preds go out and get Jason Zucker, a proven veteran, for a 6th-round draft pick. I think the biggest concern here is that the Preds are retaining all of his salary, which is kind of what it took to get that trade across the finish line with the Arizona Coyotes.
Yeah, I mean, I think also a lot of the deal with that is people are looking at that and saying, a team like the Preds already has, their team is made up of a lot of already depth players. And it's like, do we need another depth player? That's kind of the thing here. And now it's for a 6th-round pick, which a 6th-round pick is totally fine. I mean, no one's going to, and it wasn't even our pick. It was Dallas's pick. So that in itself in a vacuum is not bad at all. I'm just kind of like, what's really the plan here? And it's just like, it's one of those things where I really want to, reserve judgment until I see the rest of the moves happen here, because things are happening really, really, really quick.
Really fast. This is a lot different than last year's trade deadline where the Predators were bona fide sellers and we were having to wave bye to everybody and we were acquiring draft picks and all that stuff. And it's just really crazy and how wacky this sport is that in just a matter of a few weeks, the Preds go from cut in stone, they're going to be sellers, to an 8-game winning streak, 10-game point streak now after beating the Sabres last night. And what do you know? They're buyers. Now, are they going for the big heavyweight players in this trade market? Not necessarily, but they're still adding. Anthony Beauvillier is already on this team now. It's been traded by the Blackhawks to the Preds, which happened yesterday. And now you've got Jason Zucker. So 2 really big pieces to the forward core. And then, of course, Yakov Trenin is the first major trade piece to be dealt. Also yesterday, sent to the Avalanche for a draft pick.
Yeah, I mean, that was a trade I liked. And I thought, yesterday, from just the moves yesterday, I like those because you brought in Anthony Beauvillier, which I can't remember if you mentioned that a second ago. I'm literally just trying to look at everything happening.
Moving through it fast, man.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I like yesterday because you bring in Beauvillier for a 5th-round pick and then trade Trenin essentially for a 3rd-round pick. So you flip up 2 players and a 5th-round pick for a top 100 pick. So that's really good asset management in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, you swap defensive prospects here, so we'll have to wait and see how that works out. But you do like to get a 3rd-round draft pick. I'm very happy with getting that high of a draft pick for Yakov Trenin.
I felt like that high of a pick and a prospect.
As much as we love Yakov Trenin, we felt like he was most likely gone unless he was going to really take a big time, not a big time, but, take a pay cut. And obviously Trenin wants more money. You can't blame him. And you got to be happy for Yakov Trenin landing with one of the top Stanley Cup contenders this year. So he has a really good chance to win a Stanley Cup, and he could be a big part of the Avalanche's depth in the playoffs. I mean, this is a great landing spot for Trenin, obviously.
Yeah, and teams, we always talk about teams like Colorado who are contenders need guys like Trenin who are good depth pieces. They hit, forecheck, and play really good defense as well, especially on the penalty kill. I mean, that's that's great for the Avalanche, and I think it was a really great deal for both sides. And you look at the on the screen, you see the prospects. We get Jeremy Hansel and Graham Sword, and I'm not going to act like I know a ton about either of those, but from everything I'd seen, Hansel was at least farther along. Well, Hansel signed, actually, interestingly enough, he had signed his entry-level contract with the Avalanche and then got traded to us just hours later. So at least we can tell you that, Hansel's farther along than Sword is.
Yeah, scanning across both scouting reports for both players. I mean, we would obviously need to bring on someone who scouts these prospects much more deeply than we do. But just on the surface, it seems like a one-for-one swap. You really don't know what the future holds for either one of these prospects. I will say that Hansel has offensive upside to his game. He's a puck mover. He's a good passer. He's a good shooter. Moves with the puck well as a defenseman. So obviously the big return here out of this trade is getting that 3rd round draft pick.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, that's more than I thought. I thought we'd only be getting a 4th round pick, but we got a 3rd round pick and a good prospect swap. So I'm very happy with that trade.
Now, what I was worried about, and I said this in episode 223 earlier this week with our good buddy Clay Brewer of Nashville Hockey Now, and before the trade happened, obviously I was worried about how the Predators' penalty kill most certainly would be impacted as they try to make their march towards the playoffs, because this has been a pretty key weakness for this team throughout the year, and you have to be able to kill penalties effectively if you're going to have any success in the playoffs. But the Preds penalty kill, I know it's against the Buffalo Sabres, nothing to write home about, but they looked really good with Mark Jankowski moving into the mix. Mark Jankowski is, of course, a player today who we got to keep an eye on to see if he gets traded. I don't think he's going to be traded. His play has been good enough to where the Preds probably want to keep him. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent this offseason. So Jankowski's auditioning to stick around with this Preds team past today, and he certainly has done everything he can do. And he filled in on the penalty kill last night with Yakov Trenin out of the lineup now, and now with the Avalanche. So that stood out to me last night against the Sabres.
Yeah, I mean, Mark Jankowski, he's been in the lineup every game in the win streak, and I've always liked what he does. Again, nothing flashy that he's ever done, but it's always been consistent. He's always getting involved when he can, and one question I have is he's played at least 10 games now. Does he have to be sent back to waivers to go back to Milwaukee now?
I'm pretty sure he is past. He would go on waivers if he.
Yeah, I think so too. And luckily, it looks like we avoided that with Denis Gurianov. Not that I think anyone would have really claimed him, but we avoided that with trading him.
So roster management after the trade deadline is obviously going to be very interesting. After today, and there's still more that has to happen, obviously. So that first starting lineup when the Preds play the Blue Jackets on tomorrow for a matinee matchup is going to be, I mean, you're not expecting all these players to be immediately available because that's a quick turnaround, but we'll see.
I saw that Jarrett Anderson-Dolan and Anthony Beauvillier are practicing today. So those guys look like they'll at least be available.
Yeah, I would expect Beauvillier to definitely be available. So you're going to have to wait and see what the line combinations look like. Because one thing that's going
to be very interesting to see.
One thing about Andrew Burnett is early on in the season, you expected him to jumble up the lines and try to figure out something that was working. But he has been pretty consistent, especially over this win streak, with not messing with what's working. You got to give him a lot of credit for that. He had to change the lineup with Yakov Trenin being traded, but other than that, he's kept the top line together, and another just feast of a night for Nashville's top line. Gus Nyquist puts out another 3 assists, putting on a passing clinic. Nyquist out there. Did you see these backhand passes that Nyquist was sending from the corner of the boards to
the third goal of the game, like a no-looker from behind the goal, perfectly on the tape of Forsberg? I hardly even saw it on TV. Like, it was so unsuspecting. That's how good it was. Like, I kind of glanced away and I saw the puck's right on Forsberg's stick. And I'm like, how did it get there?
Nyquist is just a magician with the way he skate. I mean, I love watching the guy skate. I mean, the way he enters the zone so effortlessly, and then the way he picks the pocket of players on defense, he'll take the puck away, and suddenly you've got to rush back down the ice for a scoring chance, and he's really unlocked Forsberg's superstar potential. Forsberg gets his 9th career hat trick last night against the Sabres. So the Preds now have a 10-game point streak. They had to block out all the noise, all of the uncertainty surrounding the trade deadline. The game was a little bit, in the mud a little bit there for a little bit. The Sabres are definitely a team that they're kind of what their record says they are. They're not horrible, but they're not elite. But they've got some players who will burn you. Credit to the Sabres. They hung around. They didn't make it easy on the Preds. But the Preds get the win. And but yeah, to go back to my original point there, Andrew Brunette has really tried to keep a consistent lineup, but that's all over with now. Now with Jason Zucker eventually coming in, and with Anthony Beauvillier coming in, and we got to see what else happens the rest of the day. What do you think, just on the surface, where do you think Anthony Beauvillier fits into the lineup here? And what does that mean? What's the ripple effect for where other guys get moved with Beauvillier?
So, I certainly, and I know you definitely agree with this. I'm sure that the top line, Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist, that's not going to be touched.
Better not touch
that. That's
going
to be okay. The two lines I'm looking at, so obviously the line with Sissons and Glass, that one's a mystery, especially now that because Trenin got traded and Gurionov, who was on that line last night, he also just got traded. So that one is for sure going to be that's candidate. Also, you got the third line with Mark Jankowski, Tommy Novak, Luke Evangelista. That's a line that could be messed with. I don't see them unless there's another move. I don't see them messing with the fourth line of Smith, McCarron, Sherwood, because that's been kind of like the backbone energy line. So I don't think that. I think that one stays, but I think it's going to be those two middle six lines. I think you're going to see that they're going to be touched.
Well, the thing about Beauvillier is he's a scoring winger. He wasn't. I mean, are we really going to hold it against this guy that he wasn't producing with the Blackhawks? I'm not going to hold it against him. I mean, unless you're the second coming of Connor McDavid, you're probably not going to produce at your top potential on that Blackhawks team. So I'm not really focused too much on that. Also, he's been traded now. This is 2 times in the season. Yeah, he's been on. This is going to be his 4th team in the little over of the last year. So of course he needs to get traction somewhere. He needs to get consistency, and this could be very much a new scenery type of situation for Beauvillier, who I believe is just 26 years old, about to be 27.
Yeah, I don't think he's old at all. And also, and I'm sure, I honestly don't know if you mentioned this. Again, I'm kind of all over the place. I'm trying to balance this podcast, check Twitter, but like also, Trotz, Barry Trotz, who of course GM now, he coached Anthony Beauvillier, so he knows his strengths and weaknesses for sure.
The Barry Trotz connection is definitely very interesting there. Let's go back to the Jason Zucker trade since it's so new and it just happened not too long ago here today. Yep. We are now coming up officially 1 hour away from the trade deadline. We're live reaction here. If you're listening on any of our podcast platforms after the fact, the reason why it sounds like me and Max are scrambling and because we're right in the thick of it, just like everybody else, waiting for the next big trade to drop. And we haven't even scratched the surface yet on all the other big trades that have happened around the league that don't involve the Predators, which there are plenty of those as well that we're going to try to get into as well. But Jason Zucker, it's official on Cap Friendly now. They've got it listed on there. And it's a 6th-round draft pick sent away by the Preds in 2024. So I know people freak out seeing the Preds lose some draft capital there, but this clearly tells us that, I've been saying this. We said it in the last episode. Trotz is trying to figure out a way to play both sides of the fence here. He definitely doesn't want to mortgage the future, but he owes it to this locker room to try to do something special this year. And he hasn't been heavy buyer. He hasn't given up anything major in terms of assets yet, but he's definitely all in on not only making the playoffs, but doing something significant once you get in. And that's what I see in a Jason Zucker addition here, is that he's thinking, I need a playoff lineup here, not just make the playoffs. I need veterans like a Jason Zucker who can score some big goals in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird to play both sides of the fence because, we don't want to be unrealistic with the Preds. And, I still don't think that this team's going to go very far in the playoffs if they end up making it, which it looks like they will at this point. But it's kind of like these low risk ads, getting Beauvillier and Zucker for 5th and 6th round picks. And in terms of pure draft capital, I'd rather take a 3rd round pick than a 5th and a 6th round pick. I mean, that I think makes sense right there. So it's so far doing all right to play both sides of the fence. But, mainly what I still want to see, preferably, is I still would love to see at the very least one of Tyson Barrie or Alexander Carrier getting traded, which it looks like at this point may not happen.
And we still got an hour left. I haven't even thought about Tyson Barrie today with all the craziness and all the movements happening right now. But I mean, we've been going back since December saying, okay, he's going to get traded. And then as the time wore on, it became clear that teams were just waiting for him to get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper as more time wore on. And, it's just, I feel bad. I really feel bad for Tyson Barrie because he's such a good guy. He's such a good locker room presence. He just wants to play. He's a proven player in this league. It's not like this is some washed up guy who's just never accomplished anything. He could definitely help someone out there just with his power play presence alone, but they can't find a match for Tyson Barrie. So as we're doing this live reaction trade deadline edition here of Catfish on Ice, that's one of the things we're going to be waiting to see drop as we're recording this is, does Tyson Barrie finally find a landing spot?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly hope at this point Barry Trotz isn't being too picky about what he'll get in return. I mean, now one thing I learned, one thing I learned in the past week or so, and it's definitely kind of impacts how Trotz operates at the trade deadline is there's only 3 guys on any team that can be used as retained salary, and we already have 2 of them. But if there's a third one, Tyson Barrie is absolutely the guy I'm retaining salary on, and I'm not, being very picky about what I get in return. I easily, at this point, I take a 5th or a 6th, just to end this for everyone. And I was going to say something, and it totally popped out of my head there about what I was going to say about Tyson Barrie, but I wouldn't be too picky at all. I'd trade him at this point. Oh yeah, no, what I was going to say was, I'm pretty shocked that that there's not really a match for him at this point, or maybe, and who knows if Barry Trotz is just kind of waiting it out. But like, one thing is, people underestimate how much contending teams will, value a 7th defenseman. And at the very least, Tyson Barrie is a 7th defenseman, probably better than that, honestly.
Yeah. Well, here's one of my things I'm thinking about here, and it's really Tyson Barrie and Alexander Carrier kind of linked together in this because they're both on the right side.
Yep.
And I always was wondering, like, well, yeah, you obviously want to trade Tyson Barrie, no doubt. But Alexander Carrier is the wild card in all this. You want to retain him, you want to keep him, but he has a lot of trade value. It was him and Yakov Trenin. Those are the 2 players for me that I thought, okay, if you really are serious about trading and selling, quote unquote, and getting some assets back for the future, then those are your 2 guys to trade. Well, Trenin's gone now, but Carrier, he could be re-signed. I mean, we've only got an hour left, or I've seen it put out there by a lot of analysts, including Frank Saravelli, that the Preds are going to treat Alexander Carrier like their own rental. So they know that it's I know you don't like the sound of that, but it's true. If they can't figure out a way to trade him in this last hour here, coming up on 2 p.m. Central Time for all of our Preds fans, so 1 hour away, then he's essentially could be a rental for your playoff run. And he's your own player, but he can still be a rental in that regard. And then you might lose him in free agency this offseason. It could happen if nothing happens here in this next hour.
Yeah, I wouldn't like that, but
that
sounds what it's going to be at this point.
All right. But my thought was, if you traded both Tyson Barrie and Alexander Carrier, well, then your right side takes a serious hit because Jeremy Lauzon's been playing on your left side with Carrier a lot. And I know you got Spencer Stastny down there that you want to call up, but I'm pretty sure he's a left side defenseman.
He is.
So you got to what would, if you trade both of them, then I guess Lausanne would have to move to the right side.
Yeah, that's what I would think. If you in a perfect world and you trade Carrier and Barry, then you go with Yossi Faber up the top line, McDonough, Shen on the second, as you've been doing, and then Stastny on the left, Lausanne on the right is probably what you do. Now, here's an interesting thing that not a lot of people are talking about, and it's probably not going to happen. But what if Dante Fabro's on the move?
What if Dante Fabro's on the move? Hold on, I got a comment here from our good friend Matt Hardesty, who's always he is always poking fun at me about trading and getting rid of these guys. He's a good buddy. I love Matt. But Matt is on here saying BT, in other words, Barry Trotz, is now making trades just to make trades. LOL. Garyanov for Allison. LOL. I think Trotz let's remember, this is Trotz full-time first NHL trade deadline as a general manager. So for all we know, this guy is sitting in a lounge chair having the time of his life doing this.
Yeah, and also that kind of gives us our answer to, how they're going to make a roster spot for Jason Zucker, because when we got him, the roster was at 24 instead of the 23. Well, now with Guryanov out of the fold, now you got your 23. So Trotz doesn't have to do anything else for the day if he doesn't want to, which I hope he does, but doesn't have to.
Well, we haven't even, so we just kind of addressed Alexander Carrier. We're really watching that in this last hour. We're watching Tyson Barrie in this last hour, but also Kevin Lankinen. We have been talking about this for months now, about the goalie, the stable of goalies between Saros, Lankinen, and Askarov, and knowing full well that Kevin Lankinen is going to be a unrestricted free agent this offseason, and that they're going to be ready to call up Askarov by then. We've covered this in almost every episode in the last 10 episodes, so we're not going to just keep repeating ourselves. But you got to think that somebody out there would like to have, at the very least, a quality 1B starting goaltender, which is what I consider Lankinen to be, a 1B. With so many teams now wanting to have a 1-2 punch in net, there's got to be someone out there in this last hour here that will take on Kevin Lankinen from the Preds.
I would think so. Here's the thing with that, though, and I could see a legitimate reason why I could say, the Preds are just better off keeping Lankinen, maybe risk losing him for nothing. But if you're gonna trade Lankinen, you're probably in a situation where you have to bring up Askarov unless you get another goaltender in return. And do you want to do that? Do you want to mess with what he has in Milwaukee and bring him up? Because that's your only choice.
That's a good point. That's a really valid point.
You're creating Saros in the offseason, then you can re-sign Lankinen, and then you're fine. But that's the one where I've kind of thought about. It's like, what, I understand if they end up keeping Lankinen. That's the one guy I'm like, okay, you could trade him, but if you keep him, I can at least understand that one better. But guys
and then you're totally fine. So then you're totally fine with losing Lankinen for nothing in the offseason. You're not worried about what you could have gotten in return for Lankinen, because I know it's not going to be anything significant. That's something you're willing to just chalk away and be like, all right, it happens.
It's hard to say, honestly, because you got to think, like, if you're okay losing Lankinen for nothing, and if you want to trade Lankinen for something, well, you're basically saying, well, then you want to disrupt, you want to bring Askarov back from Milwaukee, which isn't a terrible idea, but it's something to think about.
But devil's advocate,
easy way to that. There's no easy answer to that.
I know this doesn't sound fair, Max, but devil's advocate here, the top priority is still always going to be the NHL club. I know that's,
and I've said that on this podcast.
It's just, it's the harsh reality. If you're a fan of a minor league team, you have to know that going in. That there's plenty of fans of minor league baseball teams that work. It doesn't work exactly the same way, but the point is, if you're a fan of a minor league team, you know that you're that if you have a really strong minor league team, then there's a high chance that those players are going to get plucked. It is what it is. I know it would suck for the Admirals, and I would hate it for them, but I get where you're coming from as well, Max. I do, and I haven't really thought about it that way, but Askarov needs to be on the NHL level. We need to get some tape on him. We need to see more than just 2 starts from him before he is committed to being UC Saros' full-time backup in 2024-25. I need to see him get a handful of starts down the stretch here.
That's
and
fair.
I don't look at Askarov as the type of player that's going to be a liability in a playoff push if you put him in for a game. I don't look at it as, okay, well, if we put Askarov in a game in late March, we might as well chalk that one up for a loss because he's probably going to give up 5 or 6. No, he's so much further along than that. So he doesn't scare me in the sense of ruining a playoff push if you bring him up. It's a tough one, but we're going to have to really watch Kevin Lankinen in this last hour here. Less than an hour now. We're 50 minutes away.
And keep in mind that, like, just because the trade deadline is technically 50 minutes away, it doesn't mean you hear of everything happening. Like, you could, like, there are things that roll in, like, at 3:15 or so that you didn't hear. Now, what will probably happen is you could hear, like, well, my time is 2:00, and if that time rolls around, and like that, by that time you could hear, okay, so-and-so has not been traded by the deadline. That might happen, but does it, just because 2:00 or 3:00 wherever you are might roll around, does not mean you're done hearing news.
That's very true. That happens every year where people prematurely come out and say, well, this team did X, Y, and Z, and they're done. Nope. Stuff definitely trickles out later in the day that just didn't get reported right away, but it still happened before the deadline. All right, we have a lot more to get into. This is a live edition of the NHL trade deadline in this last hour leading up. Lots to still talk about here. Until that, we want to give love to our sponsor, which is DraftKings, with our promo code THPN. We know hockey games move fast, just like the NHL trade deadline day moves really fast. But with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can score faster than anything happening on the ice this week. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app with code THPN. New customers bet just $5 on the NHL and get $200 instantly in bonus bets only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPENY or text HOPENY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available. For problem gambling, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2024. All rights reserved. We will tell you about some matchups to get in on the DraftKings Sportsbook app here in just a second. Have I missed anything while I was reading our DraftKings sponsor, Max? Because I feel like I probably missed, 5 more trades while I was reading that.
The only thing I can think of that's happened while we've been on this podcast that's at least kind of notable is Erik Johnson got traded to Philadelphia.
Yeah, I'm seeing that now. I
haven't seen. There's nothing else crazy notable since then.
That's pretty significant. Erik Johnson's and you're talking about the Flyers. They're a team similar like the Predators they're trying to make some noise in the playoffs. Let's look at another big trade that's happened today. Let's start bouncing around to the most recent trades that have happened today before we get to the bigger trades that have happened further back. But how about on the goalie market here? Because, at one time, UC Saros was getting more and more attention on this, but obviously that's cooled off. But Jake Allen.
Yep, that's right.
I don't think that's the prize that the Devils originally had in mind. No offense to Jake Allen, but
no, they definitely wanted they wanted a clear number one goaltender, like a Jacob Markstrom, UC Saros kind of guy.
But at least they get somebody. Jake Allen is definitely not a scrub. I mean, he will be an option. Montreal retains 50% of Jake Allen's contract, so that's also significant. And there is a conditional third-round pick that can become a second-round pick based on Allen's games played. So yeah, so the Canadiens make a move there. Obviously, the Canadiens are way out of the playoff race, so they're looking to unload some assets to think about the future. I'm going to start moving down the list here. Anything else you want to touch on? Oh, yeah, Pat Maroon goes
from Minnesota to Boston.
Goes to Boston. That's a lot of people are having their laughs about that on social media right now. It's kind
now
of
Boston's guaranteed to win a cup. Congratulations to them.
Yeah. Ooh, now here's a big one. This one happened today. This one's pretty big. It's one of the bigger trades of the day so far. Tyler Toffoli from the Devils to the Winnipeg Jets. So that's significant in terms of our division, the Central Division. Yeah. Toffoli's a certified gamer. He's good. And in return, it took a second-round pick and a third-round pick from Winnipeg. So Winnipeg's all in to make a move like that.
I think that's honestly a very fair deal for both sides. Winnipeg, they get the guy they want to go all in, and they gave up a decent bit. They give 2 top 100 picks. They didn't give up a first round though, so that's I think for New Jersey side of things, they didn't get a first, but they get 2 top 100 picks. So I think that's one of those deals that's very fair for both sides.
And let's go ahead and talk about the biggest topic of the NHL trade deadline so far this year, and that is the Vegas Golden Knights and their masterful use of the LTIR. And so many funny memes out there about how the Golden Knights are just intentionally throwing hockey sticks and pucks at their players in practice to hurt them so they can throw more players and utilize the salary cap space and even more. But a lot of people are angry about it. But look, I mean, they're operating like just really smart, cunning, shrewd businessmen right now. I mean, you can't get mad at them if they're just exploiting the system that's in front of them. They're just showing us a master class right now at how to utilize and manipulate the salary cap.
Yeah, I mean, and one thing I've seen that I'm starting to agree with now, it's and I've kind of agreed for a while, but it's at this point, the fact that the LTIR can be manipulated is not news. Teams have done it for a while. And, if people are out there, everyone out there is calling them cheaters and stuff, well, is everyone else are all the other GMs just cowards not taking advantage of that? I mean, if the Preds did something like that, I would fully endorse it. It's yeah, we're doing it. It's if you have LTIR space, use it.
And I wouldn't feel bad about it I wouldn't feel bad about it at all.
Nope.
But of course, the big acquisition they make is Noah Hannafin, the big defenseman. He was one of the biggest trade targets out there. 3-way trade involving the Flyers and the Flames. A lot to unpack in this trade, so bear with me here. But the Golden Knights get Noah Hannafin, great defenseman, and the Flames retain 50% of Hannafin's contract. Philadelphia retains 25% of Hannafin's contract. Philly gets a 2024 5th-round pick out of this 3-way trade. A lot of conditions involved that I won't bore you with, but the Flames get a defenseman out of the deal that I'm not going to even try to pronounce that name, so sorry. And a conditional 2025 first-round pick and a conditional third-round pick. So that's where all those conditions come in. I'm not going to spend the next 20 minutes reading all those conditions and breaking all that down, but definitely a major, major trade to get Noah Hannafin. The Golden Knights are interesting, though, man, because the Preds have actually moved past them in the standings.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're just, I mean, you would expect them to make the playoffs still, but it's not like it's not like they're way up in the standings, sitting comfortable in first place and they can afford to lose a few games and be just fine. They're on that bubble. So how horrible and horrendous would it be for that franchise if they messed around too much here and made all these trades and they didn't miss the playoffs? That's what I'm rooting for.
It'd be funny for us.
I think I would have to call out of work that day. I'd have to call my boss and be like, I can't stop laughing. I'm crying. I can't focus because I just can't stop laughing about this if that ends up happening.
I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but I believe, and I know they lost last night. I believe they've lost something like 7 of their last 10, maybe even a little more than that. They are slumping.
Well, that'll happen when you lose Mark Stone. And then, of course, they're waiting for Jack Eichel
No, they're
he's
not. They
back
just got
in
him
now.
back.
He's back in. Yeah, he just recently came back in the
Of course,
lineup,
probably not 100%, but still.
I don't know. I mean, they should make it. They should do just enough to make it, but the Kings have passed them in the Pacific Division. So now the Golden Knights are in the second wild card spot. The Preds have moved past the Golden Knights. So when we talk about the Preds in terms of the playoff race, it's wild card or bust for them. Most likely, they're not going to sniff the top three of the playoffs or the top three of the division. They're too far back, too much ground to make up. But they do have a really good cushion right now in terms of the wild card, as long as they can afford to miss, or as long as they can avoid any type of a really bad losing streak. Because you look at the teams chasing them, the Blues are taking a lot of losses lately. The Kraken are still a team that scares me. I feel like the Kraken could just come in the last game
right
and
I didn't really check the standings that closely.
I think it's 8 points. It's either 7 or 8 point cushion for the Preds right now.
Let's see. Yeah, it's an 8-point cushion. Granted, the Flames and the Kraken, which are the two teams on our tail, not really on our tails, but the two teams that would be next to us, they do have 2 games in hand. So that's something to look at. But no, I mean, 8 points is a pretty good cushion the Preds have right now.
And another pickup the Golden Knights made here, they got Anthony Mantha from the Capitals. Yep. Also got the Capitals to retain 50% of that AAV, and the Capitals receive a 2nd-round pick and a 4th-round pick. So one thing about Vegas is they ain't going to have a lot of draft picks coming up in the next few years, that's for sure.
No, and in a few years, they might really suffer from that.
Yeah, the Golden Knights might be okay with just doing the draft remotely the next couple of years. They don't even have to show up.
If they can even do the draft in the first place.
They can just do it on a Zoom meeting, you know? Like, we got 2
picks.
We have a 1 6th-round pick this year. We're just going to stay home and save the money on the airfare. But yeah. So some other big trades. A lot of the big trades really did happen yesterday. I mean, Vladimir Tarasenko goes to the Panthers. I like that deal for the Panthers. I really do.
Yeah, and it was good for the Panthers because it was situation they didn't give up much because Tarasenko wanted to go to Florida, so they took advantage of that and didn't have to give up much. Really good for them.
Really big 3-team trade that involved Adam Henrique, who was also very much a big-time trade target board player. He goes to the Oilers. That doesn't move the needle much for me, for the Oilers. Adam Henrique, he's a quality player. He's a good two-way player. He's a locker room guy. He plays the game the right way, but it doesn't move the needle for me at all. It really doesn't.
I mean,
and in return, the Ducks get a 1st-round pick from Edmonton. That's good. If I'm a Ducks fan, I'm really pleased with that.
Oh yeah, Ducks fans for sure. I mean, for the Oilers though, I mean, and I haven't really been all over their roster this year, but usually it seems like while they have the high-end talent with McDavid, Draisaitl, it usually seems like they kind of lack that middle 6 depth, and like Henrique provides that. So at least from what I could put on paper, that seems like a good trade. But what they haven't, and they also made a trade yesterday for Troy Stecher to improve the right side. I believe he's right-sided defenseman. So I mean, they've kind of addressed their needs, but I don't know exactly what the rest of their lineup looks like. So that's something I have to look at. But I don't know. I thought that Henrique makes sense for them. Although you kind of seem to be in the majority. A lot of people don't seem to think it's that great of a deal for them.
I'm not saying it's awful. It's just not earth-shattering. It's not something that makes me think, oh, okay, Oilers, your stock just shot up for me with Adam Henrique. It just doesn't mean much to me. It could be good, but you know, how about Ryan Johansson? That's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, because when he first got with the Colorado Avalanche, we were all thinking, good for him. Good for him to land on a team like that. Like he's gonna get some good point production. His career is gonna get revived a little bit because he's gonna be surrounded by so much talent, and just didn't work out for him at all. He's the punching bag. If you go on Avs fan forums, he is a punching bag.
Oh yeah, and not only that, but like I'm sure you were probably gonna get into, but they traded to Philadelphia only to be placed on waivers. He clears, and now he's in the AHL. I mean, Poor guy.
Did not see that coming. Did not see
and he
that.
He is not an AHL caliber player. Like, he's
definitely
to
not.
NHL.
He clearly, yes. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. But hey, you got to tip your cap to the Preds. I mean, I know it wasn't pretty, but you got to tip your cap to them that they saw something. And I mean, at some point, you got to look at the player and not the organization, because if a team like the Avalanche didn't see a use for him, it's like it makes you wonder what's going on, But definitely tough, and something I did not see coming in regards to, and no one could have predicted that. Nobody. All right. That's a lot of the big trades. Of course, earlier in the season, some other trades have happened. Of course, it's way like
there was one today that you didn't mention, Evgeny Kuznetsov to Carolina.
Oh, and I didn't mention Jake Yentzel either.
No, yeah, you didn't mention either of the Carolina trades.
Yeah, so that's another team. You call it the rich get richer. I mean, the Carolina Hurricanes were already a legitimate Stanley Cup contender, and they beef up their team even more with some scoring pop. Jake Yentzel and Kuznetsov. I mean, they've got the weapons now to break through, because they've been a disappointment in the playoffs. With the talent they have, they've been a disappointment in the playoffs. So they're definitely Stanley Cup or bust with what they're doing.
And I just saw one of my buddies who's a Canes fan text me saying the Maple Leafs have acquired Tony DeAngelo, 50% retained for a 7th from Carolina.
Okay.
Well, I mean, DeAngelo goes to Toronto, then Carolina gets a 7th. So
also Antti Ranta was placed on waivers by the Canadians.
Or not the first time he's been placed on waivers this season.
We're shuffling through so many teams, I can't keep them straight. Yeah. So yeah, Antti Ranta, that's pretty surprising to see a player like him go on waivers, a goalie like him. I mean, I know he's had a really bad year, but not something you would expect to see. So there's the trade officially now listed with the Preds sending Denis Gurianov to the Flyers.
Is it on Cap Friendly now?
I'm looking on Daily Faceoff on their trade tracker. I got to pull back up Cap Friendly.
Yeah, they have not updated Cap Friendly yet.
Nope. I think, yeah, so Daily Faceoff is updating pretty fast here on their trades.
The Preds organization still has not announced the Denis Gurianov trade, so I wonder what they're waiting on there.
I mean, there could be something else coming for it there. We got to look up some stuff on this Wade Allison guy, because I like you, Max. I really don't know anything about him.
I don't know much. I hardly know a thing about him.
26 years old. Let's see. We'll learn more about Wade Allison here.
From what I've seen, from what people are saying, it seems like he's like a pretty clear AHL guy.
Yeah, he's a former second-round draft pick by the Flyers in 2016. Looking back at his recent stretch, he played 60 games for the Flyers last season and put up 15 points. That's pretty much the extent of his NHL experience. He did play 14 games for the Flyers in 2020-21 and appeared in just one game in 2021-22. But he does have a lot of AHL experience with the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, including 46 games. He's played the entire 2023-24 season in the AHL, and he's only got 17 points in 46 games on the AHL level. So expecting him to definitely be a Milwaukee Admirals addition.
And that I kind of looked at that trade as kind of the answer, because I kind of said earlier on the podcast, but I kind of looked at that as the answer to, the Zucker trade, because the Zucker trade put us over the 23 roster threshold, 23 guys on the roster. So I bet.
I mean,
at this point, I'm a little less convinced that Barry Trotz is going to do anything else for the day.
And I mean, when you trade a player like Denis Gurianov, who you have come to the realization is not part of your long-term future, then you don't really need to be focused too much on what comes back in return in a trade like that. I mean, is it really going to be franchise altering if Wade Allison ends up never making an impact on the NHL level? No. You're taking a flyer on somebody. You're seeing what happens. no pun intended, because this trade was with the Flyers. I didn't mean to do that. I did not mean to do that. I wish I was that clever. But
right.
But you're taking a flyer on Wade Allison. Maybe he works out. Maybe he's lightning in a bottle, and he does a lot of good things for the Admirals or something. And then you eventually down the road, he gets called up. But really, you're just looking to unload a player who's not going to stick around anyway.
And it's better for him that way, because he's been literally scratched every night for the past 3 weeks of the winning streak. And also good for him if he can actually get some playing time, because Clay Brewer, who you said has been on the podcast, I saw part of that too. He's been reporting that Gurrianov's been like on the ice every time, warming up, just being out there trying to be present with the team. And of course, he's not playing, but it's like he's doing all the work, and he deserves to get some playing time. So I mean, I hope he can get some time for the Flyers. I mean, I'm not saying I'm very confident for his NHL career at this point to really take much of a step forward, but he deserves to get some playing time from just hearing that.
Definitely. We got some comments coming in here. Joel Shanker on Facebook says Carolina and Florida should be the favorites in the East.
And Florida's going to already have the odds stacked against them, but let's see if they can do the near impossible and make the finals again.
I mean, that's certainly two very fair choices to pick as your top contenders in the East. I would put them ahead of Toronto and Boston.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think so.
I'm leaning towards Carolina. Well, I can't lean towards Carolina too heavily because I don't trust their goaltending situation. Whereas I can trust Florida in their goaltending situation with Bobrovsky. So,
maybe you think Carolina could be in on a Kevin Lankinen trade potentially.
I do.
Especially because Freddie Anderson just came back last night, but he'd been out with blood clots, so you can't count on him coming back and just being the same.
I think the last time I checked, Carolina's used at least 4 or 5 different goalies this year. It might be 5. I know it's at least 4.
Yeah, you don't want that. You don't want that.
And they haven't been able to settle on any of them. And of course, as I just previously mentioned, they put Antti Ranta, who used to be their bona fide number 1, on waivers. So they have no answers to and I'm kind of surprised the Hurricanes have done nothing to address their goalie situation yet in their trades. So that's something that we got to keep an eye on. If I'm Carolina if I'm Carolina right now and it's my last chance effort, I'm on the phone saying, let's get Kevin Lankinen in here. Let's see what he can do for us. He can't be any worse than any other goalie we've used this year.
Carolina has been known to kind of devalue the goaltender position. Like they've always kind of not done much there.
Yeah, but do you really think that you're going to overcome that for 4 playoff series? If your ultimate goal is if we don't win a Stanley Cup, it's a failure.
Yeah,
you need to get a better goalie. You need a better goalie.
Although I will say they usually are not heavy buyers at the deadline. They did just trade for Jake Gensel and Evgeny Kuznetsov, so who knows? Maybe they're doing things a little different.
You can have all the scoring you want, but I have always been. My motto in the playoffs, Stanley Cup playoffs, is you can have all the scoring you want. And I'm not saying it's not going to get you far. It could get you all the way to the Stanley Cup final maybe. But at some point, you got to have good goaltending, and you've got to have a good special teams in front of that goaltender. And I just feel like a team like the Hurricanes, let's say you see offensively loaded teams go cold in the playoffs all the time. They get snake bitten. They don't get all the bounces. Maybe they have a game where they commit a lot of undisciplined penalties. You need that goalie in there who can drag you across the finish line, and they don't have that right now. I'm not saying Kevin Lankinen would be the foregone conclusion, but I think if I'm in their front office right now and I've already swung and missed on other goaltenders, I'm on the phone with Barry Trotz right now saying, what will it take for us to get Kevin Lankinen over here?
Yeah, I mean, you got 30 more minutes to do so. We're officially in the last 30 minutes.
Yeah, I'm shocked that Kevin Lankinen, Tyson Barrie and Kevin Lankinen, I am shocked that neither one of them have been traded yet.
Yeah, I mean, and I will say, I think we might be about to see an absolute barrage of trades here in the next few minutes, because the past 30 minutes have been kind of quiet, at least on Twitter, with trades. So I think we might see a lot, the last minute blitz to get it all done.
Oh, it's all going to come out quick. We better have Elliot Friedman bookmarked
If
right
I
now.
could literally put my TV on Twitter and just scroll all over, I would love to do that.
Yeah. I mean, everyone right now is focused on Elliot Friedman, Pierre LeBrun, all those guys.
Although I currently, of course, it's muted. I have the what I'm watching right now. I have the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel. They're doing a live episode for trade deadline. They've had Frank Cervalli in the top left corner like the whole time, and they now just kind of brought him up split screen. So I wonder if something's going down.
Something's got to be happening. This can't be it. This can't be all that happens.
Again, like I said, there's going to be stuff that's going to trickle in after the 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central.
Just reading some reaction on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. Chris Mason, our guy, Valley Sports. This is what he says about the Jason Zucker trade for the Preds. He says that's a steal. The fact that the Preds were able to take the whole salary significantly decreases the value of what goes the other way. Preds are loaded with draft picks the next 2 years. 6th round pick for Zucker all day. So Chris Mason likes the trade.
Well, all right. Well, Kevin Weeks just tweeted the eyeball emoji and he tagged the Golden Knights.
Uh-oh.
Here we go. Man, something might just be going down.
More reaction from the Preds media about the Jason Zucker trade. Robbie Stanley of 1025 The Game says 6th round pick and a 5th round pick spent by Trotz in the past 2 days, plus a future 3rd round pick gained. I don't have a problem with this.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with Trotz's asset management at all. Like I said, I take, in terms of just pure draft capital, I'd rather take a 3rd pick in the 3rd round pick in the top 100 than a 5th and a 6th round pick. Because picks in the top 100, that's how you really kind of steer your franchise. Again, of course, maybe not one 3rd round pick is going to move the needle too much, but what you want is picks in the top 100.
Yeah. I'm not losing sleep over a 6th round pick being sent. I'm not. I think more people are also just confused right now, obviously, about what is the future for this whole rebuild, and I think that's a big problem as well. That people just don't understand. People just don't understand what's going on when it comes to players like Philip Tomasino, for instance.
We know everything what these guys are planning, but you just never know it all. And every year, in every sport, we always find ourselves saying this is not what we thought was going to happen.
Yeah, and hockey's no different. Hockey is so unpredictable. This has been one of the more interesting trade deadlines in a while in terms of movement all around the league. I hate to be a prisoner of the moment, but Max, wouldn't you agree that this has been one of the more active trade deadlines we can remember in a while?
Just in terms of overall, it's
just overall around the league, all the movement.
Yeah, I think so. And especially if things are really coming down to the wire the way they are.
Yeah. And you finally got a salary cap that's about to go up. And so GMs are bullish right now. They're ready to make moves. It's the parity around the league is so amazing. There are so many teams right now who feel like, yeah, we got what it takes this year to realistically hoist the Stanley Cup. And I think that's another reason why Preds fans are confused about what's going on. Because Preds fans overwhelmingly do not think that no matter what the Preds do today, have enough of what it takes to win a Stanley Cup this year. And that's what they want. That's what they're hungry for, because this franchise has never won one, obviously. So, fans are not just thinking, oh, yay, we traded for these players, so now we're going to make the playoffs. That's not how Preds fans operate anymore, obviously. So they want more than just making the playoffs. And so that's why even getting Jason Zucker and some of these players doesn't really excite some of this fan base.
Yep. Kind of changed subject. I heard Matt Dumba to Tampa Bay.
Okay.
Elliot Friedman just reported it.
All right.
But yeah, no,
it is.
And I do have to agree. I don't think that anything that the Preds really do is going to help them win the cup. In terms, again, the trades in the vacuum are not, the trades in a vacuum are not bad. But yeah, I'm just a little I just don't really know exactly what Barry Trotz is looking to do. I mean, again, we'll get clarity in his press conference today, hopefully because he's going to do it at 4 p.m. Central. So hopefully we're going to kind of get some clarification on what he was trying to do.
We got a Facebook comment here from Joel who says, I don't think any of the moves you've made at the deadline affects the future of this team. I think he's simply trying to support the current team to give them the best chance to win. Joel just really sold that to me. That was very well put. And you can't argue with that statement. I mean, he owes it. And Trotz has already said that. He's already told the media. And it was more centered around the prospect of trading away UC Saros at the time. But Trotz owes it to this team to field a playoff contending team. And so that's what he's doing right now.
You do have to play like both sides of the fence, like you've said, because if you're going to do things like punish the team when they don't play well by not letting go to U2, well, then that makes sense. But you also have to reward them for playing well. So, I mean, it definitely has to maintain the culture to some aspect. So I get it. There's no easy way to go about this. But the big thing I just wanted to see was the guys that we had that could be traded that are going to be UFAs. I would hope that they would get traded, but we
got another comment on X here. Don't Musk at me says, not a rebuild. You don't have Forsberg, Yossi, Saros, ROR, Nyquist, and McDonough if you are rebuilding.
And
it's kind of hard to rebuild when you have that core of
it is. But also, you also got to think that some of these guys could. I mean, if say the Preds do what everyone thinks is going to happen, you go into the playoffs and you get bounced right away. Well, guys like Yossi, I mean not Yossi, but guys like Nyquist and Saros could be traded in the offseason.
Mm-hmm. Good point here from CJ commenting on YouTube. I agree with that from Joel. Load up on vets right now for a lot of nothing going the other way and not touching the youth in Milwaukee.
Yeah,
that's a good point. I mean, the Preds have not dealt any up to this point. We're still time. But as of now, the Preds have not traded any of their big-time prospects out of Milwaukee, which would have really rattled the Preds fan base if they would have traded away, a Filip Tomasino or someone like that.
Yeah, I mean, one guy, UC Saros, the guy who's in our Catfish and Ice fantasy group chat, he said something. He said, we didn't do nothing, but also didn't drop high picks on players we didn't need. So it's like, I kind of look at it as like the very typical Preds meh trades and acquisitions. It's like nothing that really moves the needle, but nothing that kills you either. That's kind of what this team has been for years.
Yeah. We're watching it closely here. Time is ticking. Do you think, all right, Max, do you think the Preds have gotten better? If they don't do anything else the rest of the day, do you think the Preds are a better team right now than they were 48 hours ago? When you have to balance out the loss of Yakov Trenin, that's the big loss. That's the only player you've lost. I mean, I know Denis Gurianov, but no offense to him, but I'm not going to count that as being a significant loss.
I think a smidge.
I think they're a smidge better.
And one thing I will say that Emma Lingen said yesterday that I agree with is like going into the season, Barry Trotz was saying I want to put a huge emphasis on speed and skill within this team's lineup. Well, if you look at it, he trades away Yakov Trenin, who's like a big physical, that kind of guy, penalty kill specialist, but you bring in Anthony Beauvillier, who's speed and skill, and Jason Zucker, who also has a lot of speed, skill, and some scoring. So, I mean, as far as that goes,
you added more offense. You added more offense.
You did add more offense, a little more speed. So at least Barry Trotz is sticking to his word in that regard. But I mean, I personally would have liked to see a little bit more, commitment to the future. But again, it's not the worst thing in the world at all.
Go back to another player who I'm very fond of and very high on in his importance to this team. Mark Jankowski effect here, people. I don't know if Yakov Trenin was as easy to trade if Mark Jankowski isn't thriving in the role that he's thrived in since being called up. I think Mark Jankowski and his effectiveness made Yakov Trenin a little bit more expendable.
Yeah, and I think really what really made Yakov Trenin like I will say the moment that I really thought like Yakov Trenin's probably getting dealt was when we extended Michael McCarron, and also seeing how well that fourth line, Cole Smith, Michael McCarron, and Kiefer Sherwood, that's kind of your herd line, if you will, from the past. Like I think that really also kind of made Yakov Trenin expendable right there, because that right there is your physical like line that's gonna provide the energy. So I think that's really what kind of made it expendable. Jankowski definitely adds to it, but I think that line right there is kind of what could have made Barry Trotz look and say, you know what, we can afford to get rid of him.
So in this context, talking about, I agree. I think the Preds in the short term definitely got better so far. You can't argue that. Now in the long term, no one can answer that right now because we don't know. None of us can predict the future. In the long term, we'll have to wait and see. But in the short term, absolutely, the Preds have gotten better. They've upgraded their roster, and they've gotten two players who should be able to fit in nicely to an Andrew Brunette system that wants to move in transition. You need an Andrew Brunette system that has effective passing, has great transition game, not just with speed, but with really good passing, with really good forechecking. And, you think of a player like Jason Zucker. He's been there. He's done that. He's a veteran presence. He's going to provide steadiness. I love the Jason Zucker addition, most notably for when and still if the Predators do make the playoffs. I like the addition of a Jason Zucker to your playoff lineup. Over Yakov Trenin.
I agree with
Yakov
that.
Trenin, but Jason Zucker is an upgrade to your playoff lineup over Yakov Trenin.
And one thing also, Willie Donick tweeted today, kind of going back to the whole theme of connections. Andrew Brunette coached years in Minnesota when Jason Zucker was there. So he knows the player in person. So that also right there, you're not bringing in like random guys you don't know about. No, Barry Trotz knows Anthony Beauvillier. He knows Jason Zucker. So there's definitely some intentionality there. So it's not like they're just completely throwing darts at the board, just saying, "Oh, these guys."
CJ on YouTube says another guy that Trotz has teased at bringing up that made Trenin expendable is Zachary Leroux. Zachary Leroux did get suspended for a game just because he's a repeat offender. I don't know if you missed that, the news on that today.
I heard it wasn't really.
It's not a big deal. It's just he's a repeat offender. It's not anything egregious. I just wanted to bring that up at least. And then Don't Musket Me on X says, do you think Trenin was due for a pay upgrade? I'm sure he thought he was, for sure. Yeah. I've been speculating about this since December and really before that. I kind of saw this possibly coming down the road that, when Trenin got off to such a slow offensive start this year, I think he had 3 goals or 2 goals, something like that in the last 30 games. So I know he was playing much better, and he was definitely snake bitten for a lot of times this year, but the offense dried up. I think if he brought more offense, the Preds would have been compelled to re-sign him and given him a decent pay raise. But quite frankly, Trenin didn't do enough to get a pay raise from his $1.7 million per year. He just didn't. You're not going to pay a player that does what Trenin does for much more than that. You're just not. You're not going to commit that kind of money to someone like that because there's other guys out there who can do that as well. So it's just not a commodity. It's great that you have players like that, but it's not a commodity that you have to have.
I will say I do think I kind of undervalued what Trenin was worth, and you know what he not only as a trade on a trade block, but also as a signing. I will say you wrote an article the other day saying what players on the team could be worth, and you mentioned potentially a second rounder for Trenin. I looked at that and I'm like, I don't know about that, but he got a third and
I'll take a third.
We got a prospect upgrade, so you were kind of right about that.
Yeah, I was definitely shooting for the sky when I said second round pick. I'm totally fine with the third round pick.
Oh yeah, third.
Let me get to this.
100%.
Yeah, let me get to this. So NHL tweeted out hypothetically speaking, if the playoffs started today, how do you feel about this? The Preds would take on the Dallas Stars in the first round.
And
you know what I'm already thinking? It's very possible and it's very likely that this is not going to hold this format. But just for the sake of hypothetically speaking right now, how cool and how amazing would it be if the Preds got revenge for what the Stars did to them in 2019, where the Preds were the favorites, the Stars were the underdogs. Let's flip it around on them. That would be a horrendous upset loss for the Stars organization if they lost in the first round to the Preds.
Only that, but
the season series is split 2-2, and the Preds should have won the first game if they hadn't fallen apart in the last 60 seconds. So it really should be 3 out of 4 that the Predators have won this year. Yes, they lost 9-2, which really sparked the win streak after that, but I don't know.
And one thing I will also say about that is, and I hate to look at it from this perspective, kind of, but I think that'd be an interesting series for Matt Duchene playing against his former team. And if we won that series, how he would not feel, how sad he would feel about that. And I would hate to see it that way, but I mean, that would be just something, he'd be thinking about that.
Mm-hmm. The storylines would write themselves.
Yeah.
Going up against Matt Duchene. Yeah, definitely. Where do you think that playoff series goes to? Do you think that has a 7-game potential, or do you think that Dallas would just overpower the Preds and still throw the season series aside? It's playoffs. You think that would be more like a 5-game series?
I think you could go 6 games, especially if the Preds keep momentum to what they're doing now. Maybe not winning 9 of 10 games, but playing well. I think it could go 6 games.
Losing in 6 to the Stars in the first round. Yeah, that'd be a valiant effort, but Preds fans would not be pleased with that. They wouldn't leave being happy or satisfied, especially with what the Preds have done in this trade deadline. Because you wonder, is Jason Zucker a rental? Because he's an unrestricted free agent.
I certainly think so, and I bet Anthony Beauvillier is too. I mean, I don't think any of these guys are rental. They're not rentals. I think right now you're acquiring them thinking, if they work out, great. If not, no harm done. But I'm not going to sit here and say I see either Beauvillier or Zucker being long-term plays. I don't think so.
All right, we're now 9 minutes away from the trade deadline. Of course, things can happen after that.
It's been quiet in the past hour. What is going on?
It's been quiet. I do have coming up here from Frank Saravelli. Sources say the Capitals, Max Pacioretty will be staying in Washington. So that's interesting there.
Jack Roslovic just got traded to the Rangers.
Yeah. So that's the Rangers trying to make moves there. That's another team that's in the Stanley Cup conversation. I would say there's at least 8 to 10 teams that are realistic contenders for the Stanley Cup this year.
Yeah, I would say that's about right. I mean, I have to look at it, but you got Florida, Boston, definitely in the Atlantic. I think the top teams in the Metropolitan, that'd be 4, and then 7. Yeah, it looks about like 9 or 10 teams that you could say are realistic contenders.
Coming up on the deadline here, just tweeted out from David Pagnotta of NHL Network. Says, as mentioned this morning and earlier on NHL Network, Vegas has been making traction on another big move for a player with term. We'll see if they can get this to the finish line. 10 minutes to go. So all eyes are on Vegas to make one more big splash.
Man, I do wish we would have made another move.
It's kind of surprising that I thought the Preds had one more move in them. I really did. I didn't think that it was going to end with they've only traded away one player, and we were all thinking for sure, except for Garyanovs, they traded 2, but we were all thinking they were going to trade 2 big-time core players at least, and up to this point, they've only traded 1.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, man, Carrier walking for nothing would suck. That's one where I'm like, man.
I think Trotz sees it as he's already committed that he's buying. with adding some players already. Trading away Carrier maybe put you a step backwards again, because he is an important part of the way he plays the game and his offensive upside, the way he moves the puck. You take him out of the lineup, and then we like Spencer Stastny. We love his future, but is he ready to be a part of a playoff push right now? I think maybe Barry Trotz just wasn't ready to take that leap, or maybe, and we'll find out later on, of course, as the dust settles. And I'm sure eventually we'll find out from Trotz why he wasn't able to move on from Carrier.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly seemed like there were offers. Certainly didn't seem like there was for a lack of that.
There's got to be offers out there. Joel's comments on Facebook: I just don't think anyone can take on Barry's salary. Please, Preds don't want to hold salary, so Barry is stuck in Nashville as a 7th defender.
That's valid, but that's the one where I would hold salary.
And Barry, he's an unrestricted free agent this year, and so I don't think Barry is quite what he used to be in terms of being looked at as a rental player. Like anyone who's going to sign Barry, I would think would hope to keep him past the offseason.
I mean, he is
that's why I've always said that Barry makes more sense going to a rebuilding team, so he can be the centerpiece and be kind of like a locker room presence and a leader of younger talent. That's where I would think. I'm not saying that's where Barry would want to go, but I could see Barry going to a team that needs some veterans, some leaders in the locker room, knowing that they're a few years away probably from even making the playoffs. I would think teams like that would be interested in Tyson Barrie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I surely thought someone at the very least, a contender, could take him as a seventh defenseman for retained salary, with that guy with that experience in the league and a guy who's supposedly really well respected in locker rooms. Yeah, I don't know.
All right, as we're about to wrap up this live edition, anything else that happens, we will have to cover in episode 225. But we are going to take this all the way to 3 p.m. Eastern. I've got that we're 5 minutes away.
Yep.
Before we do that, Max, what is your biggest takeaway from the trade deadline? And then I'll give you mine.
Like Preds related or just overall?
Preds related. Yeah, Preds related.
It really just shows.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, it's good. It really just kind of shows that Trotz really is trying to play both sides of the fence here, and I do think he's doing it, fairly strategically. But it really does show that he at least believes in the team enough to give him some sort of a chance, and not. And I like that he didn't buy that crazy. Again, 5th and 6th round pick is nothing insane, but again, I will say he believes in this team a little more than I think he should. But again, I understand rewarding a 9-0-1 stretch over 10 games. I mean, again, he was in a really tough spot, and I like, again, no big prospects were traded, and I think we'll get a lot of clarity in the offseason regarding this team's future, because I think this year was always kind of an experimental year, but it's not. Again, it's not all that I wanted, though. So I mean, I don't love it. I don't hate it.
To answer that question for me, my biggest takeaway is we have kind of gotten a window into what kind of a GM Barry Trotz is going to be. And I think he's going to be an aggressive general manager. He's not going to be one of those that sits back idly and doesn't make moves. And that's what I'm getting out of this. Max, you got a crazy look on your face right now. I did just
Chris
see
Johnston just tweeted, as per TSN's Bob McKenzie, Vegas is working on a deal with Tomas Hertl from San Jose.
I did. Yeah, I saw that pop up the exact same time. Yeah.
Now that's what we need in the final 5 minutes. That's what we were looking for.
Vegas is just not messing around right now. They really aren't. And I respect for them being on the final wild card spot and still going all in on these big time players. So if they get that done, then wow. Looks like the Preds are done. I mean, something could happen after we go off live here, but it looks like we are going to sign off without any more news on the Preds related in terms of Tyson Barrie, Kevin Lankinen, Alexander Carrier. Looks like some other players that we thought could be traded possibly. Kiefer Sherwood's going to stick around, it looks like. Yeah. So it would be very hilarious, Matt, if Vegas missed the playoffs after doing all this. Yes.
That would be great.
Yes. That's what we're all rooting for here in Nashville. Definitely.
Wow. That's crazy. And also in a more minor trade, Colin Miller is being traded to the Winnipeg Jets from the New Jersey Devils. Wow.
All right. We will update any more trades as they happen, but we are signing off on this live edition on this Friday because the trade deadline has just reached. It is 3 p.m. Eastern. Any other news that pops out, we'll have to cover it in the next episode. Thank you for this outstanding and amazing audience that has joined us live on this trade deadline day. It's really been a lot of fun. Hope you have a great weekend. Also, if you're watching the live episode right now, go check out our YouTube channel to check out my interview that I had with Sam Jeffries, author of Legacy on Ice, Blake Jeffrion, and the Fastest Game on Earth. Amazing book chronicling Blake Jeffrion's journey through college hockey, being drafted by the Preds, Tennessee, Nashville native, played for the University of Wisconsin. It was an amazing conversation with Sam Jeffries. You can watch it on our YouTube channel right now. Hit subscribe if you would like as well. Comment on that. Tell us what you think about that. And thank you for watching today. This has been Catfish and Ice NHL Trade Deadline Special Edition with Chad Minton and Max Greenberg, episode 224, sponsored by DraftKings, part of the Hockey Podcast Network. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.
See you guys.